Hello, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children and elders of all ages. My name is Dan Selcke. I am the editor of winnerscoming.net here with Daniel Roman, the other editor of winnerscoming.net. And here on Take the
Hello,
Black
hello.
Live, every week, week in, week out, we bring you the latest from the worlds of sci-fi, fantasy, movies, TV, space lasers, dragons, swords, stuff like that, and so forth. Daniel, how are you doing up on this fine Wednesday?
I'm doing spectacularly. It is a fine Wednesday and a short week because Monday was a holiday here. So
Feels very
I can't
strange.
complain. Yeah, it does feel very strange. How are you, Dan?
I'm great. I actually worked a little bit on Saturday. Not to disparage any presidents, but yeah, it feels a little odd, but I feel good, and I feel like we have a
Yeah,
good cache of stuff to talk about. And by the way, hello,
yes.
Martha. Hello, Camilla. Hello, everybody watching out there in
Hey,
internet land.
Camilla.
Good to see you. Good to have you. Hello, hey, Christian. Good to see you. So, Daniel, let's just jump right into it and get to, I think, the thing that the barest morsel about House of the Dragon was dropped, and we are going to
Yeah,
split it between us and feast upon it
okay.
as if it's a meal. So what happened?
Sweet. We are
Yeah, literally.
dragons feasting on dragon news. Yeah, so we have kind of had, hints about when House of the Dragon would come out. We now have a slightly more solid release window.
Mhm.
It's likely to return in the summer or fall of 2024. Definitely
Variety
not
said
the
summer. I'm gonna
spring.
go with summer.
Yeah, I think so. I put fall in there as a cushion, but what
You
we
did.
what the announcement was, or what we know, is not spring, sometime after May.
Yeah, it was Casey Bloys, the HBO Max content head, talking about guessing prudently that it
Yeah.
wouldn't make the 2024 Emmys cutoff by May 31st. So we're
Yep.
looking at June, July, August, somewhere in there. It was kind of weird because Variety said, like, oh, that means it's summer. And I'm like, there are
Yes.
other
That's
seasons
not what he
that come
said.
after May 31st, but I like their optimism. So I'm
Yes,
going
me
to
too.
choose to latch onto that as well. Hey, Julie, Camilla. But yeah, I mean, summer sounds about right. That's when the first season came
Yeah.
out, late August. It's too bad, but it's fine, and I'm looking forward to it. Have you heard those rumors about there being like, apparently this isn't true, but have you heard the rumors about like there being problems in like the writer's room and George R. R. Martin being shipped in to do script rewrites, which sounds unlikely, but it's possible. But
It's
it's spoken of.
yeah, I I have heard those. I heard those rumors. I'm skeptical. Obviously, I haven't seen George or anyone attached to the production talk
Well,
about it. So yeah, I've heard the rumors. I'm not putting too much weight behind them as of right now. What about you?
probably a
What do you
solid idea.
think? Should we
We
be
actually
heeding these rumors?
we actually may have a bit of an inside source we can reveal later who said that they're a bunch of bupkis. So I'm not gonna put too much credence on them either, but they are
The
fun.
rumors are a bunch of bubkus.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, one of the things that surprised me the most about House of the Dragon is I didn't realize how many people there were out there who were just like, the Greens were right. They should have won.
Okay.
So this whole George R. R. Martin writers room, I feel like it's Green stand propaganda because they want the Greens to win, and I don't put any stock in it.
Oh,
That's
how
my opinion.
interesting. I do love in like I love people pointlessly identifying with fictional folk and then like making that part of their life. I do really enjoy that. So hopefully there's more of
Yes.
that going forward. But
Yeah.
that's the news. It's coming out this summer, next summer rather, not this summer, sorry. It's only been like a handful of months since it
Yeah.
ended. It feels like it's been longer. But it'll come. It'll be here.
It
Sorry, it won't
does.
be here sooner. But
Yeah.
Daniel, you know what is here right now? Big as life,
Yes.
or small
What?
as the quantum impossibility, is the new
Nice.
Marvel film, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Maybe is it the longest title they've had so far? Is that longer than Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I mean, I haven't, compared characters. It's up there though. It's got to be one of their longer titles.
Definitely. I
For
kind of
a
like the
movie
longer
about a
titles.
very, very small adventure physically.
Right, exactly. I kind of like the titles, although critically the movie has
Same.
been reamed a tad. people, it's a Marvel film, so they've liked it. Not Camilla, who's in this chat right now and reviewed it for WiC. Um, a lot of people
You
that this
saying
has
she didn't
been
like
a
it?
no, she liked it. She was not like the people
Okay,
who didn't
okay.
like it. A lot
I
of
see.
critics have come down on this one. They've said that it's
Hmm.
too obviously setting up a future arc. They've said that okay, we'll get to you. Jesus, they said
That's fine.
setting
Can I
things
make
up.
faces?
Yes, you can make faces. Sorry, I thought you were going to angry.
Okay. Okay.
They said the special effects were subpar. They've just said that that in general this hasn't been a popular one. But you saw it.
Yeah,
I did not. Full disclosure.
I did.
You have a different take. Daniel, are the critics right that Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is one of the worst Marvel films yet, and that it spells doom for the franchise? Sneeze.
No, no, I
Yes.
will jump right in on the sneeze if that
Okay.
helps.
Go
No,
ahead.
I think the critics were horribly off on this one. Sometimes you'll
Horribly
find that
awkward.
like, Rotten Tomatoes, like the divide between the critic score and the audience score, they don't match, whatever. Like that's somewhat
Yeah,
normal. But
that's just fun.
Quantumania made a lot of Quantumania made a lot of headlines though, because it is such a big gap that like it current critics rated this right down there with Eternals as one of the worst MCU movies. And I don't think that is accurate at all. Like in the
So these are Eternals
slightest, I
too.
think that's totally up. I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen them all.
Cool.
Um, and I think Quantumania it's not even remotely a bottom tier MCU movie. Like it's
Okay.
pretty awesome. I'm excited to rewatch it, which is I did not feel that way with like
Eternals.
most of the with Eternals. I have not rewatched Eternals or Love and Thunder or
Doctor
even
Strange of
Shang-Chi.
Madness.
I've rewatched
Yeah,
I
Shang-Chi.
have rewatched that one because of Elizabeth Olsen, because she's awesome in it.
She really is.
Um,
I actually did kind of enjoy that one. I'm not gonna lie, but
yeah, I
I
think
guess it
that
was
was one
fun.
of the better ones. I think this as a whole was probably a better movie than Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And a lot of that comes down to, critics saying it's setting up the big story. Sure,
Sure.
like it is doing that. But I think that's what the MCU needed, because a lot of phase 4 was, these disparate little side stories that didn't feel like they connected the same way that the earlier, like Thanos era MCU did. And
Mhm.
this is like very clearly the start of like Kang is the big threat of the next phase of Marvel. And here's why. This movie makes you understand why Kang is so scary in a way that we haven't seen yet. And Jonathan Majors, I mean, his performance is outstanding. I read an interview with Kevin Feige where he said that Jonathan Majors is the highest rated villain the MCU has ever had in their early test screenings with like friends and family,
Uh,
which, could just be, blowing hot air. But having seen it, I think that's really fair, because I
did they
think
make their
his
friends and
performance is great.
family like fill out little sheets to rate the
Yes.
villains, do you think? Okay.
I assume. I mean,
Right.
I don't know that, but when
Mhm.
I didn't know what like early test screenings was, so I was glad he said for friends and family. So I assume they make them, they round up all their children and spouses and then make them fill out paperwork after the
Mhm.
movie.
Hey, you see it early, it's worth it.
But yeah, yeah. So Quantumania, I think it was really good. I think there's a little bit of a gap with reviewers. You know, the one complaint I've seen is that the story's hard to follow. I don't think that's
Mm.
true at all. I think if you have a hard time following the story of this, it's probably because you haven't really been paying attention to the MCU, which is
Ooh.
fine. Um, like there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to recognize it. Can you give valuable feedback to help an MCU fan know if the movie's any good, if you haven't been paying close enough attention to grasp the the basic premise of this movie? Because I didn't think it was confusing or anything.
I
It's
mean,
just that
okay,
it is a bigger picture movie.
let me ask you this. Do you think it
Yes.
would be like could you go into this having never seen an MCU movie before? And
No.
hop in? Okay, no, you have to have had some familiarity.
I mean, you could, like anyone
Well,
could,
yeah, I mean, we could
it
do
would still be
anything. That's pointless.
you could burn the world down. You could do what you want. But no, I would never
Jesus.
recommend to someone to go into this having not seen other MCU movies. Like, this is an MCU fans MCU movie. There's a lot of
Well,
connective tissue to other films and other shows. The post credits tie into other MCU things
Loki.
in a much Loki. Okay, yeah. I didn't know if I was allowed to say it, but yes, Loki, it
We never did.
ties in one of the end credits. The other one is fantastic, but they are clearly big picture MCU things. They're not fluff post credit scenes the way some other recent ones have been. You know, these are clearly meant to set up this next big threat to the MCU and the multiverse. Um, so yeah, I think it was great. I would give it an 8 out of 10 personally.
Man.
Like on the Marvel scale. We're not comparing
Okay,
this.
yeah.
It's not Oscar bait, but but in terms of Marvel movies, I think it's one of the better recent ones.
Hey,
Um
now that Marvel films have been nominated for Oscars, why can't they be Oscar bait?
yeah. Well, I think
Better stick
Wakanda
with that.
Forever fits that bill a little bit better than this one. Like, this is it's a pulpy, kind of goofy movie. It's got the Ant-Man like flair, even though it's not as straight comedic as the other ones. It's still a really funny movie. I laughed out loud a lot. Um,
Good, cool.
a lot, yeah. A lot of noise has been made about the special effects. That's the one thing I will
Yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah.
It's not even that the effects are bad. I've seen a lot of people talk about how it's, dropping um big name actors into digital goop basically is becoming the Marvel standard. And the thing with that is that this is a movie in the quantum realm and it feels like a Star Wars movie or something like that. Like, once we get to the
Everybody
quantum
keeps
realm,
saying that. What does that mean?
it has to do with like the palette of the movie, like the weird
Okay.
alien type people they encounter in the quantum realm, some of the costuming, the feel of the thing is kind of like it feels like an intergalactic fighting the Empire type romp, except it's in a
Huh.
very small pocket universe. And Kang is the bad guy, and he's built up this empire. Um, so
Interesting.
I think the Star Wars comparisons are really fair. And I would actually say, even more than Star Wars, I would compare it to Lost in Space a little bit. It reminded me of Lost in Space in terms of like a family in an alien world kind of trying to navigate that.
In the
Um,
world.
so so there are some inconsistent effects, I would say, though, and one in particular that a lot of people have brought up is Modok, who is this
I
weird
think
character.
Jay Patel said he might as well have not been there at all.
Well, Jay, it must feel weird to be
Oh,
sitting
they're
at your
coming to you?
computer and be wrong. No, I'm sorry. I
Daniel.
had to throw the shade,
My
Jay.
Lord.
Um,
Okay.
Modok, I enjoyed Modok in the movie. I thought he was funny. He's clearly there as comedic relief. But I do think it's fair that people don't like the way Modok looks or feel like he might be weird. But like, let's be real. It's Modok. There's no not weird version of Modok. He's a floating
True.
giant head with baby arms and legs. Like, he was never going to look anything other than weird. But the uncanny valley is a little odd with Modok. I can understand people feeling a little weird or uncomfortable because it does look like the actor's face just stretched onto a giant head. So it's a
It
little
does
weird
sound uncomfortable.
looking.
Well, I think
But
Jay's
yeah,
complaint was that he didn't seem to have much of a point in the movie.
no, I mean, he's a side villain. So his
Okie
point
dokie.
is really
It's fine.
comedic.
Yeah.
He brings the comedic relief to the movie. That is his point. And the thing I liked about Modok is it actually ties back into the first Ant-Man in a way I didn't expect. They changed like the origin of Modok a bit, to line
Hmm.
it up with, I believe, a different character who was relevant to the first Ant-Man.
It's a lot
So
of Marvel stuff.
I liked that because it made this trilogy feel a little more rounded. But I do understand the Modok hate. I don't blame people for Jay. I was not really being that
Reading you
snappy.
for
I totally get why you
Phil.
might not have liked Modok. But yeah,
I
so
mean,
that's my Ant-Man rant. Thank you for
in
coming.
general, it looks like folk more or less enjoyed it. I guess Jay did not like the comedic part of it, but others liked it. Christian liked
Yeah,
Modok. Let's see. If I recall correctly, uh, Camilla's review, she didn't like the fact that Michelle Pfeiffer's character kind of never mentioned any of the quantum stuff to anybody before now. Did that stick out to you?
sure.
Did anything stick out to you
Yes.
as bad? If you had to criticize the movie, Daniel, would you criticize
Yeah.
something?
Sure. If I had to criticize the movie, I would say one, the effects thing I mentioned. Sometimes
Yeah.
they're a little inconsistent and weird. The flip side of that is this movie has so much that I can understand how that happens. I think Michelle Pfeiffer in particular, I personally I liked her acting. I know it didn't really work for Camilla, but especially when she's on screen with Jonathan Majors, I think those two
Ooh,
are
yeah.
just really good actors, so their chemistry's great. But it did bug me, one, that she never mentioned it before, and two, that they spend a lot of the movie purposely avoiding saying Kang's name. And the way
Oh,
that
okay.
spills over to Michelle Pfeiffer is that her character, Janet,
Janet.
goes out of her way to avoid answering questions for like the first half of the movie. And I can understand why they did it, because it makes the Kang reveal so that you as the audience get the reveal of who Kang is, the same way that
Kang.
Janet Van Dyne got it in the quantum realm.
Her
You
life. Yeah.
experience it the way she experienced it. But
Okay.
the flip side of that is they basically bait you along for the first half of the movie where she just feels kind of ridiculously obstinate, because there's no good reason she shouldn't at least be like, there's a real dangerous dude down here. Just trust me. I'll explain it later, but he's real bad news. Like, she doesn't say that. She's just like, we can't talk about it now, and very mysterious. So that did feel a little forced to me.
Yeah, fair
So
enough.
I think that's a fair criticism.
I mean, Marvel's next big thing. It's done well, of course. Critically, not so much, but it's done well. It's not like burning the
Yeah.
box office, but it's warming
No.
it. Um,
Yeah.
I do wonder if Marvel will maybe I wonder if we've seen the peak. Like, I wonder if they'll ever really get to Endgame level again, or if that was a special moment in time, one moment in time,
Yeah.
and now it's down. But
Well,
they could.
yeah.
What do you think? Will they?
I,
Will the Kang
I
Dynasty
mean,
equal it, or is it too much stumbling to a two finish line?
I don't I don't know. I think that's
You don't
a
know.
very fair question. I don't have an answer for that. I think
Okay.
there's a chance. I've never been more confident that Kang and the next phase could,
Kang.
like with the Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars, I haven't felt as excited about it as I do right now because of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So I think, can it be as big as Thanos? I don't know, because that was such a cultural zeitgeist thing of,
Sure.
it had never been done before, and they did it. They got to
They
Thanos
did pull it off.
after a
Yeah.
decade of us wondering if they'd ever actually make it. They pulled it off. Kang, the thing that makes Kang different that I really like is they are building him up as a pervasive threat right from the start, basically, of phase
Hmm.
5. um, they've introduced him, they introduced him in Loki. Now they're introducing him again in a different way. And there's really this feeling that Kang, because there are so many Kang variants, because Kang is not just one
Whoa.
villain, he's like 1,000 Kangs.
So many
Um,
Kang.
so many Kangs. He could pop up at any
Not
times.
not
And
plural.
that is one of the exciting things about Kang that is very different than Thanos, because they teased Thanos forever, and then he kind of shows up and it's like, Thanos is here. Kang is going to be here the whole time. And how
Ooh,
successful I think they make their next big crossovers is going to depend a lot on how well they build Kang up
Kang.
as a terrifying threat. Yeah, Kang. And he's got a fun name to say.
It is fun to say.
I
I
think,
will say that. I'm all for that. Kang,
yeah.
Kang, Kang. It's a fun word to say. More than Thanos. What
Yes.
is their next big
Yeah.
crossover? Is it going to be Loki, do you think? Or is the Guardians of the Galaxy going to have a Kang? Probably not. I'm going to guess it's Loki
I don't
season
think
2.
Guardians. Yeah, he will definitely be in Loki season 2, because that was the end setup of Loki season 1. Was Kang, Loki broke the multiverse basically, and let all the Kangs out.
Kang.
So yeah, I don't expect to see him in Guardians because that's already a packed movie because they've got the High Evolutionary already and Adam
Sure
Warlock.
thing.
But so like Christian said, Fantastic Four will tie into Kang very nicely since he is a distant relative of Reed Richards. Yeah, totally expecting Kang to be relevant to that movie. And I'm pretty sure Feige said this, that moving forward, there isn't going to be any corner of the MCU that is not touched by Kang's presence. So I don't expect him in Guardians, but it is interesting to think about where his influences, both major and minor, might show up. So
Major and
I'm
minor.
excited.
Cool.
Yeah, Jonathan Majors, major and minor.
That guy is employed. That guy is booked for a good long
Yes,
while. Enough money to last for
as
his
he
life.
should be.
I mean,
He's
he was always
fantastic in the
great.
movie.
In
Yeah,
Lovecraft
he
Country, he
was.
was great. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
he's been waiting to break up for a while. Good for him. I'm glad about that. I just wonder if this is the kind of slump era of Marvel as a whole, but we'll see. We're gonna find out
Yeah,
as the movies continue to roll out. You know, something else coming out in the
yeah,
near future,
totally.
Daniel, is
Yes,
the second season of Shadow and Bone. Will that be a sophomore
that's what I hear.
slump, like some have argued that Marvel's current thing is? Some, not me, but some.
um,
Are you looking forward to this
not
program,
you, but
Daniel?
some.
Shadow and Bone season 2
Um,
on Netflix?
I've been like, yeah, I kind of am. I've been on the fence, not
Nice.
because I really enjoyed the first season, but it didn't quite grab me, the way some of the more gritty adult fantasy sci-fi things that we often talk about on this
Yeah,
podcast
I
do,
feel you.
because Shadow and Bone is aimed at a slightly younger audience.
Yeah.
So
Teenagers.
teenagers are, expected to enjoy this. So, but the flip side of that is I am looking especially forward to season 2 because I think it was the best book in the original trilogy of Shadow
Mhm.
and Bone, and I think they are doing at least part of Six of Crows this season, which is the other group of characters in that
Mhm.
series, the Crows, like Kaz Brecker and his
They're
gang.
around, yeah.
They're around, and the first season they basically just made a bunch of stuff up for them. The second season, I believe
It
they're
was
starting to
convincing.
pull in things from their actual book. It was
Mm.
convincing. I don't think I've ever seen a show so successfully combine two just totally different books into one season.
Like
Like,
they didn't feel like they were like it. I watched the first season and it didn't feel like the one story was a book and the other story was made up. It felt like it was all of a piece. Like I would have been surprised if I read
yeah,
the book and found that they weren't there at all.
yeah. And I think it is one of those rare instances where it's better than the book because of it. Because the first Shadow and Bone book, like, it's okay, but Bardugo has grown so much
Mhm.
as a writer since then that, like, the things they did with the show are just like, it's easy to look at it and be like, this is an improvement. It's clearly an
Cool.
improvement
Always
on the
nice.
book. Yeah.
Well,
Um,
maybe the
yeah.
second season
Do
will
you,
improve on that book. I wonder if we can peer into that and maybe see a little preview in a trailer.
yeah, let's watch.
So you read the Shadow and Bone books too, not just watch the program.
I did. They were the pandemic is starting. I need new books. I
Ah,
got the
gotcha,
trilogy right at
gotcha.
the start.
Did you get
Um,
them on like hardback or did you get them in like ebook form?
I got them in hardback. I
Nice.
spent
I
so
would
much
too.
time. Yeah, I spent so much
Ooh,
time.
Ben
Can we
Boggs
pause
has some
on
new
the
stars. Yeah, yeah,
Darkling
yeah, yeah.
right there? Um, yeah, any of those. Those.
That's a
Yeah.
good one.
So I
Yeah,
got them in
Starman.
hardback. It's easier for me, because
It
we
is for
already
me
look
too.
at screens so much. But yeah, so season 2, the Darkling is back, of course, because he's the
Ooh.
sex icon of the show. They're not going to get rid of him. But he's all scarred up and gnarly looking because when last we saw him, he was in the Shadow Fold, which is this swath of darkness filled with monsters that cuts the country of Ravka in half. And he has an interesting link that I don't know how much we want to talk about, because I was surprised by it in the
Probably
book.
not much.
I know they've talked about it in interviews, but he has a little bit of a mental link with Alina this season. So it's going to get darker, this show, in some ways that might shock people, I think.
Really shock people. I can't wait to that.
If people aren't expecting
Rip
it,
it.
yeah, there's definitely some bittersweet stuff that's going to go down in this show.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So let's
Rip it.
carry on. Let's rip it. Yeah. And yeah, he's got shadow creatures. The scars are fun.
It's a Netflix? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
We have
Alina, this is one of Netflix's swings for the fantasy fences.
And of course, Ben Barnes can control shadow, control darkness. Shadow monsters are hearkening to his call. Whereas Alina summons light, shadow versus light versus darkness. For teenagers, it's good.
Yes. Can we pause on that piratey looking guy with the jacket?
Oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah. So the shadow thing is especially fascinating here, because creating monsters out of shadow is not a thing the Darkling could do in season 1. So there's a big question of why can he do that now? And doesn't take a huge leap to imagine that he getting stranded in this dark dimension might have helped him figure that out. But this
as a
guy
non-book reader, I assume he like got caught in the Shadowfold and then like made buddies with the people who live there. But I guess I'll find out because I have more of the books.
Yeah, definitely. I think a little more complicated than that. There are no people that live there.
Well, the
just
evil
monsters.
Creatures or whatever.
Yeah. So this guy on the screen, this character's name is Sturmhond. He is a pirate. We'll be seeing a lot of him. I would imagine he'll be a fan favorite. If you've read the books, you know about Sturmhond. You know why we're expecting that. Producer Richard compares the Darkling to Vecna getting caught in the Upside Down. Yeah, very much like that. But yeah, let's carry on. And so Dan, you were not, I think, super hot on the first season of this.
I liked it.
Do you think you're going to watch this one?
It depends what else is on at the time, but
that's fair.
You know what? I'd give it a good 50% chance.
I like that it's coming out so soon, because this is it's March 17th.
It's right around the corner. Yeah, there's quite a lot coming out in March.
March is going to be a good.
You got Succession. Yeah, there's going to be some good stuff.
Extrapolations on Apple TV Plus.
Extrapolation Apple TV Plus.
I didn't know. It looks so good.
It looks pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah, that guy. Love that guy. Would you rather summon light or shadow, Daniel, if you had to choose?
I mean, I'd say light. How about you, Dan?
I think I'd say shadow. I mean, it just looks so much cooler doing it. But
it does look pretty cool.
It all looks cool. And then there's the ones who can like manipulate your organs from the outside. That sounds pretty badass. Also very dangerous. Fire. Oh, just people throwing around. Also, when is that damn Last Airbender show coming out? Because that should be this year too. It they're going like this, and the fire comes out. It's reminding me of that.
Yes, that especially reminds me of the Last Airbender too. I imagine we're gonna get a lot more details on how some of the magic works this season. So one thing, I think we've gone past it in the trailer, but for those of you who've watched, if you remember the first season, there was this stag that Alina had to find that getting the horns of would be an amplifier for her, so her powers would be greater. The second season is going to very heavily revolve around that idea. There are 2 other ones that are on the docket that she's going to need. One is basically a giant sea snake. One is a phoenix, the firebird. So yeah, should be some really cool stuff. Shadow and Bone season 2, March 16th, and should be a good time.
That's about. Yeah, lovely. And on Netflix, well, I'll follow up, but if you happen to be watching, please make screeners available if you would. We would love that.
Yes. It would make our lives easier.
Hands on those. But yeah, cool.
I need
Shadow and Bone. Yeah, I mean, I prefer it. You watching anything else, Dan, or anything else out there? Anybody watching anything they want to
Yeah.
sound off about on TV, movies, just the side of a wall, paint drying? What?
Well, I think so. There's one big one that we need to talk about. But I will say, aside from the big one, the main other thing
Mm.
I watched in the past week was I rewatched Into the Spider-Verse. It remains
Oh,
basically
and
a
it's so much fun.
perfect
Yeah,
movie.
it's
It
really good.
I forgot just how like flawless 10 out of 10 that movie is, right from the first lines. So that was fun. What are before we obviously the big thing is The Last of Us, but before
Yeah.
we talk Last of Us, what else are you watching, Dan?
I'm still watching For All Mankind. Ooh, I finally you'll
Oh,
like this, and
nice.
I really enjoy it. I'm getting through it. I finally watched the first episode of the Orville New Horizons, the first of like 10 or whatever. And
Yeah.
yeah, they definitely upped the cinematography budget. They got rid of the jokes, and it was a lot more of kind of a serious, straightforward sci-fi thing. I'm looking forward to it because I really
Yeah.
enjoyed the show. By
That's
the way,
awesome.
I more or less like
Yes.
it just got better and better as it went along. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it.
It's got some speed bumps at times. I think New Horizons especially by like episode 3 or 4 was when I started feeling like, oh, they're really doing something special with this season.
Yeah, the first
So I'm
couple were a
excited
little
for you
whatever,
to,
but
yeah, I'm excited for
interesting
you to,
stuff.
that's exciting.
And For All Mankind is really, really good too. I'm looking forward to finishing that. But yeah, The Last
Cool.
of Us. That was the last episode. They
Yeah.
aired this past Sunday. Kin,
Yes.
Joel, and Ellie reach Jackson, Wisconsin. Joel ranches his brother Tommy. Very
Wyoming.
emotional. Wyoming, sorry, not Wisconsin. Whatever.
It's okay. This
One of
show
one's
is
in the
great
middle.
for learning the lay of the United States a little bit.
America. I loved it, by the way. I thought it was great. The show kind of has the
Same.
confidence to slow down a bit because it wasn't it was hard like a big actioneer like episode 5 where you had
Yes.
like a revolutionary army versus an army of zombies, including one who was like 7 feet tall, mushroom daddy or whatever that guy was. It wasn't like episode 3 where
Yeah.
it was this really
Mushroom Daddy.
bold. Apparently, the guy's a sex icon, and no, not the guy. The
Apparently.
mushroom creature he plays is a
Oh,
sex
ew.
icon.
All right. People got some weird kinks. I'm not going to judge it.
It wasn't it wasn't like the big start. It wasn't the third episode where it was just this big bold departure from the main plot, like a side story short film. It was just the characters we know. It felt like an episode of a TV show. It was characters we know. They weren't really at the high point of their journey. They were kind of in between, just talking,
Yeah.
settling in, getting to know these people, hanging out in this miraculously well-functioning town that has managed to eke out a memory of civilization within a time of horror and apocalypse and devastation. And
Yeah.
Joel and Ellie have some back and forth, Pedro Pascal smashing a bunch of scenes. It was just really, really good character stuff. I liked it a lot. It's episodes like this that make you this kind of you just kind of get to like settle back into them, and then it pays off when they inevitably have some horrible shattering moment. This stuff
Yes.
is when that builds, and I just like hanging out with the characters and getting to know them better. I really like this one.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I
Ooh.
think, it is clear, I think, that these are some very experienced television or just storytellers telling this story because a lot of shows you would see fall back on like we need an action set piece in every episode to keep the viewers along. It's a thing I actually remember hearing reports of about something like The Witcher. So that's a
Oh,
thing,
sure.
and it speaks volumes, I think, of The Last of Us that they are confident enough in, as you said, in their quieter scenes, in their two characters in a room talking scenes, that they can make whole episodes that mostly focus on that, and it can still be just as compelling. Episode 3 was like that too. There was like a single action scene in the
I
whole
mean,
episode,
it was, but episode
and it
3
was
was like
small.
this like bold, unexpected, self-contained story. This is
Yeah.
more like I don't
Yes.
know, the characters
This
we
is different.
know, kind of just taking a break.
Yes, and it had one of probably the most famous scene from the game was in this episode where Joel and Ellie kind of have their argument And
Mhm.
Joel says, "You're right. You're not my daughter. I sure as hell ain't your dad." That's a thing they did basically word for word, down to Craig Mazin said, the showrunner, Craig Mazin said he
Mhm.
tried to get the exact same wallpaper and everything from that scene of the game. So they were very committed to
Man,
recreating it. Yeah,
it's
loving it.
difficult.
Loving The Last of
Adaptation
Us.
is hard because there are some things like The Last of Us, I'd argue like Fire and Blood, that like deserve to be adapted very close. And just the number
Yeah,
basically my point here is, showrunners, if you're out there, just stay close. I really don't think that there's much to gain by going very far off the beaten path. And I mean, like, they've changed some. I'm not saying never change anything. Like, they've changed things, they've
sure.
amplified things, they've focused on certain things, then let other things kind of go by more quickly. Like you said, there's at the end of the episode, there's like a big
Yeah.
action scene in the game where Joel and Ellie escape the college,
Yes.
the university
Yeah.
hospital. But I mean, you know, you can't play it right here. So sure, just have the one guy stab Joel and then cut out.
Sure.
Um, but it's clear that this game, about this show, because the game creator is with it, has just been so careful about making sure it stays as close as possible to the source material within reason, and not
Yeah.
they haven't like introduced new turns and plots just because. It's all when they have, it's always been because of a very good reason, and generally it's like really close. And then look at things like The Witcher, or
Yeah.
even parts of House of the Dragon, where they just go far afield, and it never seems to work. So I guess my advice is just, if the source material is good, why stray? Half your job is done. It should be easy for you.
Yeah. I think it's a tricky thing because, being exact to a source material isn't necessarily a guarantee that your thing's going to
True.
be
Yeah.
good. But at the same time, I think there's something to be said for, like, if you're going to change something, it needs to still feel like it's in the spirit of the thing. And I think that's something that, like, The Last of Us does really well. And another great example of that I see producer Richard threw in the chat, he's been watching The Expanse.
Ooh, The
That's another
Expanse.
example where they changed plenty of stuff in The
Mm-hmm.
Expanse, but find me an Expanse fan who's upset about it. I've never met a
Yeah.
single one. I've never even really seen them online, people getting mad about changes from the books, because it just still feels like the same story. And I think that's why, like, Bill and Frank worked so well. That could have been in the game. It's just a different take, but it's still, like, thematically, tonally, like, totally spot on. So yeah, interesting times.
And Julie, by the way, is quite interested in Carnival Row, which we are covering. Richard
Yeah,
Preston back for a while. We're covering Carnival Row. Yeah, that show is getting its second and final season over on Amazon.
I'm
Before it
curious.
rides off into that dark night.
Yeah,
Probably
I might try
maybe like,
giving that one a shot this weekend
it looks
too,
cool, but probably like
Julie.
one too many fantasy shows to be like a giant hit. Like it's
Yeah,
cool, but it never blew up like some of the others because there just isn't room sometimes. But I'm glad it's getting
yeah,
its last moment in the sun before it bows out.
yeah. I'm happy for the fans of that show that they finally are getting season 2, because they've been waiting
Word.
for a few years and there have been a lot of weird delays, and it got hit by, COVID and all this other stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, curious to hear what you think of that next week, Julie, if you watch it.
Orlando Bloom.
Um, the only other are we is there anything else you're watching? I've got one more thing before we head into the
No,
lightning
hit me.
round. Okay, so I've also been reading this week
Oh.
these two books, The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan,
Ah,
and the sequel, which came out last week, The Tyranny of Faith. um
ooh.
Dan, I feel like you would probably really like these books, actually. So
Aw.
it's kind of like a mix between, like, epic fantasy and, like, Sherlock Holmes a little bit. It's
Hmm.
all about the law. It's basically a justice is a traveling law keeper who is investigator, juror, and executioner all in one job.
Ooh. Judge
Um,
Dredd. Cool.
so yeah, so it is traveling around. The story is told in first person from the perspective of his apprentice, who herself is a
Huh.
very fascinating
Ooh, that's
character.
nice.
Um, and And yeah, the examination of it's basically like the decline of this empire as told through the erosion of its legal system, which is just like a really
Oh, that's
fascinating
interesting. Yeah,
angle to take that I've never really seen in a fantasy book. So
definitely.
yeah, The
Who's the
Tyranny
author
of
again?
Faith by Richard Swan. Richard
Richard
Swan
Swan.
is the author.
Okay, that does
Yeah.
sound kind of cool to me. I
Yeah.
think producer Richard
I
is angling. Sorry, go ahead.
no, it's just an excellent book. So I'm in the middle of that right now. Highly recommend if you like mystery fantasy type stuff because it
Nice
combines
titles
the
too.
two.
It's hard to
Yes.
have a fantasy title, which is basically the blank of blank, and have it seem new and
Yes.
interesting. So the Tyranny of Faith, ooh, it's neat.
Yeah.
And I feel like Richard is kind of baiting me into saying something like I don't know, like I am the law. I'll just say that and we'll just let that pass. All right. Anything else, Daniel, before we move on?
I don't think so. That's what's up.
Shall we move on to the lightning round?
I think we shall lightning. Yeah. Sounds good to me.
Cool.
And I am gonna ask you first, I think.
Nice.
I vaguely ordered part of these, so we'll see
Yeah,
how
yeah,
it
yeah.
goes.
Every week we kind of
All
order,
right.
we didn't. We'll just go ahead.
We somewhat ordered these. Are we ready with the buzzer? We ready for buzzage? All right. Yes.
That's a no.
Okay. That's a no. So Dan, I'm curious about this because you just told me about this a couple minutes before the show. So Matt Smith / Daemon Targaryen is up for best villain in a series at the Critics' Choice Award. What do we need to know here?
I like that could cause some cool discourse because Damon was someone he did some villainous things,
Yeah.
but also a lot of people liked him, and he's with the hero. But are there heroes? I want to see what people are talking about that. I think it's legitimate.
Same.
I think you can do it. I can pull that off, but it's a potentially volatile choice. Perfect.
Yeah, I suppose if you're a Green stan, you probably think he belongs in that category.
Oh, the green stands, green black people. All right, Daniel. The Wheel of Time season 2 is coming this year, but there will be a time jump between the end of season 1 and the start of season 2.
Yes. This comes from a recent interview with Marcus Rutherford, the actor who plays Perrin, who said there will be a bit of a time jump for season 2. I think that makes total sense because they're basically doing books 2 and 3 at the same time. So to kind of bring these disparate plot lines back to a level playing field, I think they need a time jump. All right. So in other Wheel of Time news, apparently Tor Books, who is the publisher who publishes the Wheel of Time in the United States, apparently they're looking into writing more Wheel of Time books. What's the deal with this?
So the rumor was, and it's a rumor, but it's fun, was that they were kind of asking certain Tor writers at Tor, which is a publisher, to pitch them prequel ideas. Because apparently Robert Jordan didn't have much for a sequel, notes, but he had some notes for about the world that we should do a prequel. I wouldn't be shocked if they were toying with it. I don't know if it'll come to anything. But yeah, why not?
Yeah.
All right, Daniel. Okay.
Yes.
So speaking of the Orville a minute ago, Seth MacFarlane, the guy who made the Orville, is going to adapt a comic called The Shrouded College for Peacock. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't really know very much about the Shrouded College, so I'm intrigued. I think apparently, but Seth MacFarlane does. I think he has had a really great run of it, especially in recent years, with the Orville, specifically. So I'm gonna give it a chance. I think he's kind of bridging over from just comedy, and I like that for him.
He really is, yeah. He has successfully sort of transformed his career a bit. Good for him. Doesn't have all the time.
Yeah. All right,
hit me.
All right, Dan. So I know you're probably very excited. You'll be first in line at the theaters for this. So Hellboy, the superhero movie about a red-skinned demon-looking guy who fights other monster-y type things. Hellboy is being rebooted again after the failed David Harbour reboot.
Surely it'll work eventually.
How do you feel?
I feel fine. It's not like I'm excited or horrified about it. It's like even the original ones with oh no, I forgot his name. The ones with Guillermo del
Ron
Toro back
Perlman.
in the day. Ron Perlman. I mean, like I liked
I
them.
love those.
They weren't
Yeah.
like giant hits, and then they brought it back with David Harbour, and it was even less of a hit. And now they're gonna do it again. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Maybe find another more popular superhero or something. Although I do enjoy the movies. Okay.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think the problem is Hellboy specifically more than the productions. He's real cool, but he's always kind of been a cult classic type hero.
Yeah, maybe he has like a smaller niche to fill, but he's getting lots of tries. Damn. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. All right.
All right. Speaking of reboots, sequels, and such, there's a sequel in the works to the post-apocalyptic movie I Am Legend, starring Will Smith. Will Smith will return along with Michael B. Jordan, and the whole thing is sort of inspired by The Last of Us, or at least this current movie iteration.
Yeah, I think, I'm a little torn on this. I really like, so they are using the alternate ending as the canon ending, which was on the DVD, which basically has Will Smith's character living. It's closer to the tone of the book I Am Legend. So I'm curious. I'm also like, who asked for this? But apparently it's something that has been, that the studio, I guess it's Warner Brothers, Legendary, whoever makes this, they've been trying to do for ages. So they finally have cracked it.
Julie pointed out that we're going over the buzzer today, and she is right. Yes. So Julie, we'll try the last couple to keep it under 20.
Okay.
Let's keep us honest.
All right, Dan.
I am excited for this.
You are. I am too. This is the most relaxing news I've seen in a while. Kevin Feige wants to put out fewer Marvel shows.
Oh, that is nice.
A year.
Yeah, I mean, again, we talked earlier about Marvel kind of coming to like an inflection point a bit. They got to do something, because I mean, even though it's still successful, they're used to this like giant level of huge success, and the kind of these have been decent shows movies they're putting out lately just haven't really been hitting that level. So it makes sense to me.
Yep.
There we go.
Think it's a good thing.
Responsible. Okay, this one's kind of funny. A live action remake of the animated movie How to Train Your Dragon is getting made.
Yep.
Jay Booker.
Yep. I'm okay, I guess. This is another one of those, like, who asked for this? DreamWorks kind of trying to copy Disney here, because Disney's been doing live action remakes of all their cartoon movies. I like How to Train Your Dragon. Like, I'll give it a shot. I'm not super excited about it, but I'm intrigued. I hope it's good.
Nice.
Miguel Sapochnik's next project.
Wait, really?
Not really. No. Okay. So in our final lightning round news, The Last of Us bested House of the Dragon in the ratings for its first week, according to Nielsen.
Yeah, I wonder if there is something to the more familiar tone of House of the Dragon, where it's kind. I mean, it's they're all wearing modern clothes. It's not our time. It's zombie time, but it's simpler, easy to follow. No big time jumps. I wonder, and good for it. HBO again is rather killing it. So just it's all good.
They are. Well done, Casey Bloys. Good on you.
Well done, Casey Bloys. And that is our program. We will be back with another program next Wednesday, same time, same place. 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern, way too early Australian, here on the Winter is Coming Facebook page and the Winter is Coming YouTube page, where you and I, sometimes guests. What?
Did you say 4 p.m., 5 p.m.? We're at a new time now. It's
2 we are. I'm sorry. Yes, sorry.
That's okay.
2 Central, 3 Eastern, way too early Australian. We used to be at 4 p.m. It's been a long day.
Hey, true.
We'll be back then, next Wednesday, on the, thank you for catching that, on the Winter is Coming YouTube page and Facebook page. Also, download us in podcast format where podcasts are available, be it iTunes, Google Play, or elsewhere. And right now the time is 38:47 LST. We're signing off. See you next work.
Take care, all.